Welcome to the Real Triathlon Podcast. I'm your host, Garrick Lowen, here with Nicholas Chase and Jackson Laundry.
Welcome to the Real Triathlon Podcast. Today, you are joined by Mr. Nicholas Chase and yours truly, Lisa Becaris. And I actually was just at a training camp down in Tucson for about a week, and we were talking about podcasts, and one of the girls I was staying with, she said that she gets really annoyed on podcasts when people don't introduce themselves, because if they're new to the podcast, they're like, who are these people? I'm trying to figure it out. So I'm a professional triathlete. Nick's a professional triathlete. We're both members of the Real Triathlon Squad. Nick is the owner and creator of the Real Triathlon Squad, and this podcast has been going on since, 2020?
Yeah, I think about 5 years. Frig.
Yeah, long time. We're getting older by the day.
And I honestly I gotta say, this is not to slight Jackson or Garrick, but for many episodes, I was the only one doing any interviews, and they were not around. So I tried to keep this thing going as long as I could. I know it wasn't the best, but I did what I could amongst trying to do everything in my life. So thanks for sticking around. If you've been a long time listener, we appreciate you so much.
And welcome if you're a new listener.
Yeah, new listeners.
And today we have some kind of crazy, a little bit of a crazy time in professional sport and triathlon. It was just announced today that Imogen Simmonds, one of the best triathletes in long course racing, has a provisional ban. Provisional suspension. Let me just pull it up.
Well, real quick also, while you're looking at that, this is a great episode to talk about this, because after Lisa and I do our intro, I'm going to be interviewing Robbie Wade from Rythm Health, which is a home blood test situation where you don't have to go anywhere. You can fast and wake up in your home, take the test, send it off. Uber will come pick it up. The results are within 7 days. They'll do a consultation. Anyways, you need to keep listening beyond what we're talking about. But blood is on our mind, and it seems like Imogen had a tainted sample of some. What was the drug?
Yes, it is called, I'm not going to pronounce it right.
And I'm just going to Google Imogen Simmonds.
Yeah.
First.
Ligandrol.
Ligandrol.
And Ligandrol is also, this is crazy. I've been reading, so my Google search is going to be like, what are you looking up? Because I've been typing in many things about semen and urine, and we'll get into why specifically. But Ligandrol.
I'm going to actually look at it. Yeah. Ligandrol. Maybe it's Ligandrol.
Ligandrol.
Ligandrol. It's a non-specified substance prohibited at all times, according to the ITA.
Yeah, so you can't take it, can't have it in your system. And she tested positive for this on an out-of-competition test on December 8th. And this was in the lead up to 70.3 Worlds in Taupo, New Zealand. And she was in New Zealand at that point. And her test came back positive for a metabolite of ligandrol at pictogram levels, which she describes as a quantity that is equivalent to a dash of salt in an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
But isn't that all blood contaminated? This is what it's like for every blood test that comes back like this. It's all a very small amount.
Unless, yes, and we'll get into that too. And the reasoning that she said that this ligandrol is in her system is that her longtime partner had been experimenting or taking ligandrol to help improve his own physique around the time of the positive test. And she claims that it was a positive test because of sexual relationships that they have had on and around December 8th. Which essentially means that some sort of, PG-13 is some sort of saliva if you're just kissing, but more by and large, probably some semen, whether that's um, injected or taken in. What's another word for that? Or orally, anally, or vaginally.
Physically ingested via some sort.
Some sort of canal. Um, and so she's hired a legal team and claims her innocence. And she says she takes anti-doping obligations seriously and is a true believer in clean sport. So to be associated with a banned drug is heartbreaking, which I could imagine.
And to be honest, like this is the hardest part about this entire thing is like everyone media is the worst because they will just damn you as guilty before you ever have a chance to prove any innocence. And I think it's not like it was found in her system, obviously. Now we move on to the next point. Was this intentional or unintentional? And that's really where media fucks it all up because she has no opportunity now to kind of really play her case unless it's just like over and over and over. And is she ever going to be known as anything else? But I think it's important to remember the following. This is a provisional suspension while they do an in-depth, she hasn't been like totally banned for a year. It's just a provisional suspension while they get more results based off of a tainted blood test. Right. So let's not just throw her under the bus just yet. Like let's let these things play out. And I think like the ITA and like WADA and all the associations, like they don't probably release any of this lightly. There's a reason why it's been brought up. They probably had talks with her since, this is since Worlds. So this has been like, she's been on her radar for a little while. And again, there was another athlete. It was in 2019, a Canadian 11-time canoe world champion, Lawrence Vincent Lapointe, tested positive for trace amounts also. And I think it was investigated and covered that the use was by her boyfriend also. So it sounds like this isn't the first time that it's been transmitted sexually, right?
Potentially.
Body fluid.
That's what, that's what they said. And I actually looked up an article because when I start Googling, like, can you contract banned substances from semen? Because I think a lot of female athletes are like, holy cow, is this something that we need to be super concerned about now if you're someone who's sexually active? And there was a study done basically looking at, so the study wanted to look at how much urine was found in ejaculation. Because they think that more banned substances are actually found in urine versus semen, but there are some substances that can be actually like found specifically in semen. But this study basically just looked at how much urine was in ejaculation, and they found that on average, 52 microliters, which I found out what a microliter is 1/1,000,000th of a liter.
Like a teardrop.
Yeah, less than 52 1/1,000,000th of a liter is on average found of that, the amount of urine that's found in semen. So you can theoretically have that in your body. However, then again, how is it? I don't know how that's absorbed in your body. If it's vaginally, I don't know if it's absorbed into the bloodstream, into the urine. I don't know how that works. And there's a lot of
fluids there. I don't know where it's going.
But I think at the end of the day, this kind of raises a couple of concerns. One, if this is your long-term partner, how do you not know that they're testing banned substances?
I don't know. I don't know if it's come out that it was a hidden thing or maybe she knew. Like it was in his hair test and not her hair test. So I think that that's pretty good on her side.
What she claimed on her Instagram post was that through investigation research, it was discovered that unknown to me, my long-term partner had been ingesting Ligandrol to help improve his own personal physique around the time of the positive test. So she claims that she didn't know of that.
Who thinks of that shit? Who's like, oh, I read this in Men's Health. You just go down and get a prescription for Ligandrol. When do you buy this stuff? Can you get it like Mexico, probably?
I don't know. I don't know if it's like a legal substance, but the crazy thing about this article that I found is the only article that I can find about anything about semen contracting banned substances. And it didn't cite, but it used three examples of cases. And the first case was case one, a 22-year-old female athlete produced a urine sample containing low concentrations of ligandrol. And basically a sample, okay, basically it's confirmed. And her boyfriend was taking ligandrol, 12 milligram dose sporadically, but about twice weekly, including taking multiple doses over the last week prior to the athlete's test. So basically there's like a carbon copy of this example. Like, so I don't know. It's really hard for me to, well, I'm struggling with this because I've met Imogen. I've only met her once, and we met at 70.3 Worlds after the race, and she was a gem of a human. She's a great person. Like, really enjoyed her company and just chatting for maybe a minute. However, I do think it's important to realize that like nice people dope, good people make mistakes. And I think I'm a little bit frustrated in that the triathlon community, yes, they have gone, obviously, like, are mad at Imogen, but not to the extent that Thomas Rodriguez level. So that's a little bit frustrating, and it seems a little bit two-faced that everyone's like, oh my gosh, Thomas Rodriguez like tested positive, like doper, like this is crazy. And then Imogen comes up and so many pros aren't really talking about it. It's more of like an age group type of, or amateurs or fans of the sport, in my opinion, from what I've read and what I've seen. Maybe that's completely off the mark. And someone did argue that it was because Thomas's performance came out of nowhere at Ironman Texas when he popped positive, and that Imogen has been really good for a long time. So
I mean, I think it's hard to kind of look at the cases and the people and the circumstances without having a little bit of a different feeling. I mean, I know that after Thomas Rodriguez Hernandez finished Texas and he was like being interviewed and he was like, fuck your titles or something like that. And he's just kind of a little arrogant. And I've seen him, I've been in races with him when the refs have straight up in Mexico, like pulled him back to our group when we broke away in Cozumel. Like, I've just not had the best experiences. And at Mont Tremblant, when me, Jackson, Lionel, Cody were all racing, like he was drafting so flipping hard that day. We were just like calling him a draft asshole on the podium because we were like, I can't believe this asshole. And so I think his demeanor, his personality, and the way he handled himself, whether it was a cultural anomaly or if it was really him, like it just seemed like he just wasn't as wholesome of a dude. And especially like blaming it on meat,
chicken and eggs
and whatever. Like, I don't know. Imogen, I feel like maybe we had some shit done that she had no idea about. Could have been, you know, maybe she didn't know her boyfriend was. And why would, like, I don't know. I don't know if like if I lost my physique and like, I don't know if I would take anything to like get that. Like, I don't understand that from a dude perspective. Like, what is he an athlete that's like looking at his, just doing mirror selfies? Or is he performing well? Or I don't know. Like, what's this dude's outcome based goal for taking this shit?
I don't know. But I think if you ask a whole bunch of men over the age of like 45, that are all, like, so many men are on like synthetic testosterone.
Fair.
And they're like, so I want to look good. I want to feel good. So I think it's kind of like a similar case. Look good, feel good. I have no idea. But I just think it's just really, it's hard because this is like the first female pro triathlete that in my kind of generation that has popped positive that I'm aware of, since I've been competing. Yeah, not since like I've been competing. It's been Colin Chartier and Michael Weiss, and
Michael Weiss was probably ago. Like before your time. You just like he's just still
racing.
Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, that fucker just and then the funniest thing is the doper who actually like legit dope Andrew Starkowitz and used to talk so much shit to people, like, and he like knowingly did it not to try to gain advantage, but just so he could like live. Like, I can't believe like the reality show of our endurance sports doping history is just so insane.
It really is. And but every time something like this happens, you want to think, like, my initial response was like, oh my gosh, like how could that have happened? Like, what are the chances? Like, are we all susceptible to this? Like, what if Steve accidentally takes something, he makes
Yeah.
out with me, and now I'm like have contaminated substances in my body. But then I go back to the fact that so many athletes, I've literally never been drug tested as a professional, and I want that to change. Like, put me on the whereabouts list. I'm ready. Um, so many people are tested continuously. Like Sam Long, he's probably tested like every other week or something like that. Maybe not that extent. But these people probably have to come across some sort of contaminated something, touch somebody, share a towel. I don't know. But the fact that like he's not doping, he's not using drugs, and he's doesn't have any positive drug tests. Like, I think we also have to look at this in the light of, if you're doing drugs, you're gonna test positive, probably. Maybe. I don't know. Actually, I
Who
don't know. Now
knows?
I'm just
I don't,
confusing.
Lisa, with just like watching Icarus like years ago with that
Yeah.
Netflix show, like the availability, the access to this stuff, it's not hard to do any of this stuff. But I think like there's just two worlds. Like there's a world where people are willing to go and do and have anything, but I think we have to look at like very gut level instincts on this stuff. Like if it looks too good to be true, if the performances are too hot and cold, like you're the best in the world and then you suck and you're only the best in the world one day a year, like look at the patterns. If you fractured your entire pelvis and then you're racing 6 weeks later or some shit like that, or if you've got some
Yeah.
crazy injuries and you've like healed yourself because you've had some help, like
Yeah.
those are situations where I think that the culture needs to be a little bit more aggressive. But instead, we wait until we get like whatever this is, and then we just go nuts. Like we make memes and like everyone's freaking out. But like when something is a little bit suspect but not quite caught yet, like we don't say a goddamn thing. And I think that is part of the problem.
Yeah. So you think people should start stepping up a little bit more, calling people out, being whistleblowers, like to,
I
because there
think
is a
like
pathway that you can say, like, reach out to WADA or Ironman. I don't know who it is. I don't know the pathways, but you can say like, oh, Nicholas Chase, like I know that he's doping. Like there was that whole Sam Laidlow, Rudolph, not Rudy von Berg's dad, Rudolph von Berg, claiming that Sam Laidlow had doped, and there was like
yeah.
investigations and things like that. So
Well, there's the even Austrian Thomas Steger. He was put on the list because he was found to have substances in his home that were banned, and his dad's a doctor.
yeah,
And so like that guy never really got publicly outed too hard, but like he was, I think he's suspended also.
yeah. I I think it also, just to note, as professional athletes, it's really important to be aware of who you're surrounding yourself with. For example, like Imogen's old coach, was
Yeah,
it
he's also
Jürgen Zach? Was like I think a German guy, and was involved in some doping scandals. I can Google that real quick, but I don't want to speak.
well. You're not wrong. I think you're opening the door to be a little bit more painted on the negative side of the case if you do have a history of associating with people who've been in that space of having stones thrown at them.
I do. Oh, so this is something I don't understand, is how, as an athlete, especially as a professional athlete, you allow yourself to be associated with people that have had that background. Like specifically, God, his name is Tom Danielson. He was a professional cyclist.
So
And
you wouldn't have Lance Armstrong over for dinner?
I wouldn't, but that's because I think he's kind of crazy. But because I'm mad with how he handled the whole situation. Like everyone was doping during that era, but
Yeah.
how he handled it made me super upset. Um, but like Tom Danielson, for example, like he owns his own like cycling team in Boulder, Cinch Cycling. And I just like, if I was an athlete, I would never associate myself with like Cinch Cycling because like
Yeah.
he's the owner of it. And that's something that there are some professional athletes, high level competing people who do associate themselves with that. And that's something I'll never be able to comprehend. Maybe someone can shed some light on that for me, but it's just the whole morality behind it doesn't I'm like, this person was willing to cheat, and you want him to be someone who is your moral guide, is on your athletic journey with you. So it's just something that is always has confused me.
I don't blame you. I mean, I think that's why like none of our friends are ever going to be probably like a Colin. I'm never inviting that guy for Thanksgiving or anything like that. Like, just won't
Right.
happen.
Right. But I do say, like, in a world, Imogen is innocent. Like it was contracted via sexual activity, and that's a thing now. That should be really scary for every athlete. Like if
Well,
that's a thing, that should be pretty scary. Because what if you're a single lady, a single triathlete, professional triathlete, you're a little promiscuous, you like to sleep around, you don't use protection, you have an IUD, the guy doesn't pull out, and you just a wild night out, and this guy was on so many anabolic steroids, and now
and
that's in you.
he hasn't had a partner for like 2 weeks. So he's like ready to go.
Right. And it's a lot.
The volume, the volume is turned up.
That's just like a scenario where like I'd be really scared if I was that person, you know?
I think
And that's why I think a lot of people, I think we thought it as a joke, but when people were like, oh, you can get whatever, it's not chloroform, I forget what it's called, that Thomas Rodriguez had in his system from
yeah.
chicken and eggs. People are like, should I stop eating chicken and eggs? Should I only eat organic chicken and eggs? Where do I have to know the source of it? It kind of puts a level of panic on all of us as to, oh my gosh, are these things that can actually happen? Or do clean athletes not test positive?
There are thresholds that are set for good reason within these tests that aren't going to catch things that are probably pretty normal unless,
Yeah.
for example, he is eating like 17 steaks and like 30 eggs a day. Like maybe that would increase those ranges, but of course that's not even possible. So
Right.
I think that when these things do pop up, it's for a good reason. And then that reason must be validated. And that's really what has to happen from Imogen Simmonds is like the story, convenient or not, it does add up. And the fact that it's not in her hair and that it isn't his, I mean, there's some corroboration to kind of connect the dots there. You'd hate to say that she was getting any other performance enhancing from that even trace amount. You never know if it did make a difference.
Right.
And so I think that's really what we should start to kind of look at is like, did it really matter that much? She's been dominating and been really fast and strong. And this
For a
is
long time.
only instance, and she's probably been tested quite a bit. She does have a good story to kind of protect her a little bit. But obviously, I think it should put us on alert anyways. We should be looking for outliers. We should be looking for crazy healers. We should be looking for trends that are obvious. And like there should just be some more PIs hired to follow some of these pro athletes around a little bit and like see what kind of suspect stuff is going on. Like
Yeah.
we should probably try to police ourselves a little heavier.
Yeah. I do say so. Since this is a provisional
Suspension.
So she had it in her system. And does it come down to now whether that was intentional or unintentional? And both actually have some sort of ban carried with them. Or can it be completely dismissed? Because I feel like if you take a tainted substance and then you prove that you're like, I had no idea that it had testosterone in it. If you can prove that, you're still on you still get a ban.
Well,
so
here's like what are the next steps if she's so I guess per the articles, it is the athlete's personal duty to ensure no prohibited substances enter their bodies. Athletes are responsible for any prohibited substances or metabolites or markers found to be present in their samples. Accordingly, it is not necessarily that intent, fault, negligence, or knowing use on the athlete's part to be demonstrated in order to establish an anti-doping rule violation. So the rules just state like, if it's there, it's still your problem, it's still your fault, and you're going to be held accountable. Like, I think the rationale and the reasoning at the end of the day, they may just lighten the, like, if it is found this way, they're going to probably maybe give her 6 months suspension, probably the smallest amount, but she will probably still have some sort of punitive charges, and she's going to have a hearing is going to be, and there's going to be arbitration. She'll hire experts to probably, I guess she's more than anything, I think, confident she'll be able to prove innocence, even if she does have to accept some sort of a ban, which is, I think, probably how it should go.
Yeah. It's wild though, because I do feel for athletes that are convinced or
Convicted
of these violations, because forever,
They're
like
tainted.
this is gonna follow her forever,
I
whether
know.
or not it was purposeful, it was accidental, it happened like that. Like, she's probably gonna lose sponsors. She's probably gonna it's not gonna be good, and everyone on the race line might be like, well, is it okay?
Well, and
And
we all have to
that's
set precedent, right? Like, whether it was intentional or unintentional, sponsors and race organizations and drug enforcement, like, they still have to uphold the highest standard no matter what, because otherwise anything could happen. So
right.
I think unfortunately for her, this case, her partner really fucked her over,
Yeah.
figuratively and in life beyond, or and literally, I guess.
Oh, oh man. It's really sad to see. It's not good for the sport of triathlon, because we're in a era right now where we're really trying to grow and gain steam and gain, traction in mainstream sports. And this, I think it makes a lot of people, a lot of companies just not want to be associated with it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, you want the best, you want to believe the best in athletes. But sometimes it is what it is. Good people still make mistakes,
Yeah.
and that's what can be at the end of the day. But regardless, like, I'm sure, like, she's a great human. She has lots of friends.
Yeah.
She's always been super great. She has been a great athlete, been very fast. Um, I don't know what else to say on it. It's just sad. It's just a sad day.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, it is just a big pain in the ass for all of us. If that guy had just been like not so concerned about his physique, like, she'd probably still be all right. So, I mean, we all have to own up and make choices and pay for those choices, sometimes more than others. So I guess all we can do is just remember, like, everybody's a human being, and Imogen Simmonds is a human, and she has feelings, and there's no sense in just belittling, shaming, and being so arduous. Like, she's going to be harder on herself than probably anybody ever will, based off the character I think she has.
Yeah.
And, if it was something that was intentional, that this is just, we're getting caught up in the story, I hope it comes out. Like, the truth usually does, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, we just have to believe that the system is in place for a reason, and until we're proven otherwise.
Yeah, and, like, let's just work together on it. Like, let's not be dicks and go against each other and create, pointing fingers. Let's work together to make this a better ecosystem where athletes can have an opportunity to defend themselves. And if they can't, then yeah, we just remember that, and then they're done. Like, they just don't get to come back if you're, like, proven. Like, it's like the seven deadly sins. Thou shall not take a bag of blood that was been in a freezer or a cooler forever and get that EPO. Like, that's one of the seven deadly sins. Don't take EPO in your veins. Like, just don't do any of the major ones, but these little outline ones, I think we need to, like, really be careful to just hear.
What about the Shelby Houlihan distance runner? She just made her comeback after a 4-year suspension from her claim tainted burrito. She's back racing. She just finished second at the U.S. National Indoor Track and Field Championships in the 3K.
I don't know. I don't know the background, but maybe she didn't do it. I don't know.
I don't know, and that's what it's crazy, because, like, at the end of the day, we probably will never know. And there's other dopers in the sport of triathlon, and we'll never know. And that's so frustrating. At the end of the day, we have to think that everyone's clean and competing by the same rules that we are.
But they know. And
But
they're one
they
day they're going to
know.
have to atone for it. They're going to be 80 years old and they're going to be drinking their wine. They're going to tell somebody and be like, I was lying
Open.
for 30 years of my life and now I got to go to hell.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's just, yeah. Let's just hope if you're listening to this and you're someone who's been doping, stop. Don't
Yeah,
do it. If
you
you've
don't
ever
need to
thought
do it.
about doping, don't do it. It's not worth it.
Just
Just
don't
be
even go down
slow.
that road. If
Just be
you're on
slow
that
like
road,
us.
turn off that road.
Turn
Turn
off that
around.
road.
Go
You
back
can
home.
change your life.
Change your life and give yourself a new hairstyle. You'll feel good about it. Do different things that are legal, like go
Yeah,
on an adventure.
go on an
Take
adventure.
a bunch of caffeine. That's totally legal.
Yeah. Anyways, this is Lisa and Nick's take on doping and the recent doping violations with Imogen. And
Thanks for
yeah,
listening. Keep
thanks for
listening, and we're
listening.
going to hop right into this next part with Rythm Health. You might need to go get a snack, get your glycogen stores back up because it's a good one. And you're not going to want to bonk during this episode. Lisa, thanks for being here. I love your perspective. You're an angel. We love having you on the show. You're the best thing that ever happened to us. Thank you.
Anytime. Happy to be here.
I'll glaze you any day you need it. Peace out.
Peace out.
Welcome back to the Real Triathlon Podcast. It's been a while. We haven't had a sure enough guest, and usually the guests come from me because I'm the guy who's out there on this podcast trying to put all these great companies on spotlight. And today, Robbie Wade from Rythm Health. And honestly, you've got a lot to say today about what you're going to do to stir up shit in the industry, which I love. But Robbie, thanks for being here.
Pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Just a little background. I have just had, honestly, my first consultation after a blood test. So I've gone full on through the product awareness, signing up, having it shipped to my home, taking the test. And my experiences was probably no different than anybody else's. It was super easy. I mean, Robbie, you've created this because you found a hole in our ecosystem with blood testing, and there's some frustrations. And what is some of the background that led you to develop this great? Now, I don't know if it's a product or if it's a system. What would you call it?
Service, I guess you would say. Yeah, it's a product or a product and service at the end of the day. Yeah, to answer your question, I've always been interested in regular blood testing, but obviously, just for context for anyone who doesn't know what it is, through Rythm we have the most affordable regular blood test on the market. So we test all of your sort of hormone and metabolic health markers once a month, for $79 a month. It's cheaper than most supplements, and you get a lot more insight into what's going internally in your body. We are very focused on sort of biomarkers that impact your day-to-day life, and overall health, wellness, performance, energy levels, and whatnot. But yeah, so just with that context in mind, why we actually started it was I sort of had been interested in a while. I'm a triathlete as well. And yeah, I found one of these little devices that, it doesn't have the tube on the end. I just have one on my desk. I don't know where the tube is. But basically it goes on your arm. You press the button, it fills up with blood. It's completely painless. You can do it from home. It's just as accurate as a venipuncture. And so it was more of like an accessibility piece. It was sort of by chance. And then I realized that it was kind of the perfect product for this type of ecosystem where you have people who are really busy training a lot, need to test regularly, and going to the lab is sort of just a little bit too inconvenient and for many people uncomfortable. So yeah, that's kind of what led us down that journey. And then yeah, I just kept really focusing on areas that were very like performance focused, to help with like triathletes and different athletes. Like anyone can use it. It's for general wellness, but like I also had a kind of personal bias to like focusing it on sort of performance and optimization.
I love it. And having used it, like there's not a needle in sight. Like you're not
Yep.
going to sit at a phlebotomist doesn't come over. It's simple. And I don't know the construction of it, but I'm going to take a stab because after I took the unit off, I was like, wow, there's like a tiniest little, it's like there's a little scalpel that just pops in and out and just makes a slice in your skin deep enough. And then there's like a little suction that happens immediately after it. So it's like slice and suck. And
Yep.
then you just,
I'm gonna put that on the website, Slice and Suck. It
yeah,
says that's a good marketing tagline. Not really, but yeah, keep going.
it felt like that's what happened. And then it filled up. I think within 8 minutes is what it took for me. I was cold, so it was a little probably longer than it even normally would be. But that was pretty much the mechanism. And let me just paint a picture because I've had blood tests for years, over and over again. You get up early, you're already a little pissed because you don't have your routine. That's like the only thing you have in life is your morning routine, and it's getting disrupted because you got to go to a blood test. You got to drive somewhere, make an appointment, go in some lobby. They're probably showing up late. Most of the time, the phlebotomists are just showing up when I do because I'm like trying to get there early.
Yeah.
And then you have a blood draw and go home, and then you got to barely get your day going an hour and a half to 2 hours late, if you're lucky. So that's best case. Worst case scenario can go crazy, but this process, it came to my house in a nice package with a beautiful instruction, the video yourself that you send out, everybody watches it. And the process was so flippin' easy. That was like what blew my mind. Cause I love blood. I love the blood test. Like, why would you supplement blindly? Why would you change anything about your diet and nutrition blindly? This is an accessible point, and that's why I'm so stoked about it. So that was my rant. But honestly, what has your experience and feedback been throughout? Like, everybody, is this like a game changer?
Yeah, I mean, I don't say this lightly, but people literally get joyful when they use the device because we've done these like blood tests live. And one of my favorite things is watching people use it for the first time because, for a lot of people who are scared of needles or don't like needles or don't like going to the lab, it's just this like mind-blowing moment. And I don't know if you've ever used a finger prick, but I would honestly say I'd rather go to the lab than do a finger prick. Like those things, like for some reason, it's just unnecessarily painful and uncomfortable, and I don't really bleed out of my fingers and stuff. It's not overly accurate either, so it was like a really good balance there. And one of my other favorite features that we have is the Uber pickup. I don't remember if you use the Uber pickup, but
No,
we actually
I have my wife dropped it off. So yeah, same thing.
okay. We we actually have like a Uber service that comes and picks it up from your house and takes it to the lab. So you to the FedEx, and so you don't even need to go to the post office, which is awesome. So yeah, the feedback's been incredible, and I'd say we have worked really hard on our dashboard to make it really easy to understand and whatnot. So it's sort of an all-round experience. The one other thing that I was going to say to you that you made a good point on is like you do get to the lab early because you're a morning person, and like that's wonderful and whatnot, but what most people don't realize is most of the lab reference ranges are based on getting your blood draw between 7 and 9 a.m. So if you don't do it in that time, the accuracy of your results actually starts to fall. Like, for example, with testosterone, it's diurnal, right? So it actually rises in the morning and falls in the afternoon. So if you did your blood draw at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, like that's not an accurate testosterone blood draw. You have to do it in the morning, which means there has to be an appointment available and stuff. So there's the convenience element plus the general experience element, but I'd say all round, like people are pretty stoked, like without even, just trying to gas up my product or whatever it might be. It's a really nice experience, as you said.
No, we're gonna glaze this product pretty hard because for me, it's something like I've just been waiting for something like this. I hate the routine. I hate airline routines, getting the airport early. Like if there was something similar that the airlines could come out with where like I just get transported or teleported immediately and I'll pay whatever the cost, like just to eliminate all that 2 to 3 hours of bullshit, I would do it. And I think, blood tests are something athletes probably pay a little bit more attention to. But let's say that the general population is going to benefit from this aspect. Those who need routine blood testing and do get pricked all the time. Like, have you heard from any regular practitioners who work on any sort of general concept, like the elderly folks or whatever? Like, is this just, what do you see happening with what you're creating in the next, even 5 years?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, the reason why beyond, for performance that I'm interested in regular blood testing, and somebody sort of corrected me, and I think it's smart. I use the word frequent now because regular could just mean like regular going to the lab in that way. So frequent blood testing, so doing it more often. If you think about like AI is coming to every industry in sort of the world, and so like AI driven healthcare, personalized healthcare, whatever you want to call it, the more frequently you're testing your blood, the more accurate your insights are going to be. It's kind of like, I think mostly, or almost all health metrics are becoming more and more frequent. Like we're tracking our sleep every night, our heart rate every second, and like whatever it might be, like things are just getting more and more frequent. You've got a CGM on right now, like everything and the more frequently you test things, the deeper the insights you get. I always get this question, like, do you need to test monthly? No, you don't. It's like, do you need to track your sleep every night? No, you don't. Do you need to track every run? No, you don't. But if you do, you're going to get much more insights than anybody who doesn't. But where do I see this going in 10 years? Like, I mean, the thing with blood testing is the more frequently everybody tests, the cheaper it becomes for everybody. It's a massive volume game. And so I think that, almost all blood biomarkers are going to be tested more and more frequently. These sort of like personalized health AIs are going to be really up to date. Like you'll have your wearable, your CGM, and then, the blood test will be sort of like filling the gaps of that, whether it's like fortnightly or monthly. I'd say the biggest thing that happens is the health insights that you get are going to be hyper personalized, and the testing is going to become extremely affordable. Like I think it's going to be, one of those subscriptions that you have that's like Netflix, Spotify, and your monthly blood test, whatever it might be, and it's like $20, and you can do a whole host of biomarkers. Like today we can do 20 to 30 roughly. But they're extending the size of the tubes. And also you could do one on each arm, like it's painless, it's quick. I'd say yours was really slow, like for the average person, but you said it was cold. Like I've seen it done in 20 seconds. I've seen it done in 3 minutes. I've seen it done in 10 minutes. The longer you leave the heat pack on, the faster it would be. But, hypothetically speaking, if you could get like 100 biomarkers every 2 weeks for $20, everyone's doing that, in that sense. Yeah.
So especially imagine, pregnant women. There's
Yeah.
a lot of things you could track regularly. I think for sure, I've been reading Dr. Peter Attia's book, Outlive. And while there's all kinds of stuff you can take or hate or love within that realm of his world, the medicine 3.0 approach is what he kind of calls it. And I think that's where you're fitting in completely. We're no longer just forced to live in this reactive world where, oh, wait, we've had this problem for like so long now. Now we have to address everything to fix it and re-educate. But if we're pre-educating and prehabilitating and doing all these things ahead of time, like this is a better, healthier world and ecosystem, especially for those who need it the most. Those who do have, I don't know what type of blood viruses or issues or low levels routinely or diseases. So I think that this is really outside of the sports realm. And this is why we normally do benefit from the general population. When they have big problems, we get to have some of the fun. So
I think the education piece is sort of undervalued in a way, like what you just said. Like, when you start tracking your sleep and you start to learn what deep sleep is and REM sleep is, and you actually start to understand how sleep works and that there's sort of a structure to sleep. I think once people start testing their biomarkers regularly, you actually learn what your thyroid does and what testosterone is and the impact of, stress on your cholesterol or the impact of sleep on testosterone, and your sort of day-to-day actions and behaviors and lifestyle. It kind of becomes real when you see it manifested in a biomarker and you start to understand how that biomarker works. Like if you ask most people what testosterone does, they think that they'll respond saying, oh, like it's something to do with the gym and you do more strength training. Like the sort of increase in your testosterone from strength training is pretty low. Like most of your testosterone is generated in your sleep. Like no one really talks about that. They don't really think about it that way. And so it's really, and a lot of people see, they think that intermittent fasting is really good for them. But if you live a really high stress life, that sort of just stacks your stress and you end up with like worse cholesterol levels. And you don't see that unless you do the blood test. So there's like massive education piece that comes as part of testing these things regularly, where you're not just having a doctor's appointment, walking out after 5 minutes and then just saying, yep, everything's good. But you didn't actually learn anything. Like in that sense, there's a deep learning process that actually happens.
For me, that's the best part because I work with athletes all year long and we're trying to figure out all these things. Like, well, if you want consistent results, like your consistent training has to be supported, and your lifestyle is the biggest limitation on that. And misinformation, there's a lot of bad information out there that people are getting rich off of, bad supplementation. And this opens the door for a lot of possibilities for companies like yours to come in and add a lot of leg ups to those people who are just feeling lost and like just totally corralled into these areas where they probably have no control. So you're giving a lot of people the answers and the tools before they probably knew they needed them. And this is probably the best part about it. It's like, I got to say, like, Mark Dubrick is the one who told me about you all. You were at Kona. I did see the tent and everything, but I didn't, I was letting Mark do his thing. I didn't want to step on his toes. But then I was like, all right, I gotta see what this is about. And you're working with some really good athletes. What is that like ecosystem looking like? Are you getting a lot of data mining? Are you using some of the athlete markers to kind of help you understand general population versus athlete recommendations? You obviously do, because we just did one. Like, you look at blood panels, and feel free, to have my consent to say anything about my blood tests. Like, are you
You just
using
want me to tell everyone that your biomarkers are amazing. You got like unbelievable cholesterol profile. No, I'm joking, but yeah, sorry, keep
keep it
going.
coming, keep it coming. But yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things here. So I just want to be clear from a privacy standpoint. We don't look at your results unless you book a call with us. Like even when I just got on the call with Nick, because he used a different email, I couldn't actually access it without his consent. I needed to send him a separate consent with the same email. So the reason I do a lot of those calls beyond the help that it gives you, I actually get to see people's data and stuff like that with their consent. And there's sort of a lot of pattern recognition that goes on there. But yeah, like we sort of see global data, like we can see everyone's cholesterol seems to be rising in winter, and we notice like different things. I will say that when it comes, like the one thing I do want to point out is there's a lot of individual variation when it comes to health, and this is what you were saying about different health influences, and I will get into the athletes versus the normal population, but I really wanted to drive one point home is like health is so personal. People have different genetic limitations and benefits and whatever it might be. And I actually encourage people to do more experimentation. Like I was just talking to someone earlier today about their results, and I was saying you should probably increase your protein intake, like the gold standard's 1 gram per pound of body weight, whatever. She was uncomfortable with that. And I said, look, just run the experiment. Like if you feel better and your biomarkers improve, great. If they don't, stop doing it. Like it's your life. You have a lot more context than I have. But generally speaking, this is good for most people. And so, try a supplement, see if it improves your biomarkers or whatever you're trying to get it to do. If it doesn't, ditch it. Like, I think we can be very absolutist in these kind of things. And like, you're going to see a lot of people have a very strong opinion because if you look at something with food, every single one of us are experts when it comes to food. And the reason I say that is all of us wake up every day thinking about food. What am I going to eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner? What am I going to do? Blah, blah, blah. There's very few things in life that you think about as regularly as something as that. So everybody's kind of like an individual expert. It's kind of a weird topic like that. So it's really hard to give people advice. Before I continue, are you going to say something?
No, I was just say that's religion and it's food. It is like, or
Exactly.
diets, religion and diets. Those conversations tend to have the same polarized opinions, and they will have the probably family ending arguments.
Yeah, exactly. And the reality is no one's really correct except for you. And I actually find the people who have the worst kind of relationship with food and where it manifests in their biomarkers is when they have a bad psychological relationship with food. Like the more you stress about it, it often ends up sort of manifesting in worse biomarkers. Like I was saying to you, you don't eat an amazing diet. Like you just eat calories for exercise and whatever it might be, but your cholesterol markers are great. Your, nutrient markers are great. Like you just train really hard and you exercise hard. You eat, most things that you need to eat, but it's not like you have a crazy vegetarian diet and count your calories every minute or anything like that. But I get a sense you don't stress about it too much, which I think is kind of like the main thing. But what I was going to say about athletes is you also have a concept called an athlete's paradox. So athletes' biomarkers can actually look very similar to someone who's chronically ill because what happens is most of their bodies are breaking down,
Yeah.
except the athlete's body's rebuilding back up. So you have a lot of flux, like your kidney markers are flushing out more regularly,
Yeah.
your liver's more active, like you're using a lot more fat and stuff like that. So it's very individual. And so that they're the main things I would say with athletes versus the general population. But I will say, like, exercise is king. Like, that's the thing that I see from the athletes. It's like, it trumps everything. Like, you can think about, well, you're eating less. Like, movement is like, it's going to reduce your stress. Like, people who live more sedentary lives have typically worse biomarkers. People who exercise less, their metabolic rates are worse. They typically eat worse. Like, just exercise is like I think if you had to focus on one thing, it would just be exercise more. Like you can be a little bit more flexible on your diet. It's going to reduce your stress. It's just going to manifest and sort of trickle out in every other area of your life. So I'd say the one thing you just see in athletes is just the impact that like the sort of exponential impact that exercise has on every other function in your body.
Exactly. what I love to hear, because
Yeah.
right now we're at this phase where everyone just thinks that they just need to eat and hyper focus on the diet and it's going to take care of everything. But evolution has not caught up with our lifestyle, the availability of massive, copious amounts of food. And our body is totally fine staying fat, over nurtured, and under muscled. It just wants to sit that way because that's kind of like survival. But we've not really changed a lot of our lifestyle because of the convenience of everything that we literally have in front of us. So I love hearing that exercise is usually the major weapon to fight against a lot of these general population diseases that are killing, probably a majority of our life away from us. Like, so I want to try to get as close to 100 years of age with good health span where I feel good and I'm active and I'm with it. I don't want to have dementia.
That's it, 100? Man, you're gonna live to 200-300.
Well, given the rate of technology and the massive amount of income, I could probably live 120, 130. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, when you were saying like things are going to change, I'm more leaning on the side of like if you like the amount of innovation going in the healthcare space and how long, like how much we've increased lifespan in many different ways, especially like elderly people. Um, I would say I'm more on the, people probably think I'm crazy in some elements, but like I'm more on the side of like we're going to extend our lifespan a lot, like especially with AI. And I actually have this weird, I'll probably say it right now, I kind of have this weird mental model of the world in the sense that if you like use technology, for example, if you think about like 15 years ago, there was like a thing, like there was a type of person that was like a nerd. Like if you think about it, like, they had a checkered shirt, they used like a computer and whatever. Now it's like everyone's a nerd. Everyone uses computers. Everybody's at a computer all day, every day. You kind of have to work really hard to not be a nerd. Like a nerd is the general status quo of humanity these days compared to what it was 15 years ago. You were like weird if you use technology a lot. I think it's going to be the same with health, where it's going to be actually really difficult to not be healthy. I think you're going to have like cholesterol lowering soft drinks and meats that actually like improve heart health and like all these devices that you use and foods and supplements and all this stuff where like you're literally going to have to go out of your way to be unhealthy with like all the technology that's sort of coming down the pipe. Like, I mean, some of these like sugar-free soft drinks like Olipops and stuff that are full of like probiotics and prebiotics, like they taste unbelievable. It's like having a Coke or something like that. Like they're insanely good. And so you're going to be able to like satiate yourself from a taste perspective whilst like boosting all of your biomarkers. And that's just like the base layer. And then, they're going to figure out different ways of like improving your fitness and whatever it might be through all these wearables and education and regular blood testing and whatever it might be. So I think it's just going to be just like everybody became technologically savvy. I think everyone just becomes healthy, like in a way.
That's super cool. I love that viewpoint. I haven't even thought about that, but that makes perfect sense. AI is probably changing things that we'll probably regret in the next couple of months. Like it's happening so fast. But to your point earlier, also, I was that athlete who was stressing about food, and it would cause me to binge eat, and it would cause me to overdo one thing and eliminate one thing. And like I was always trying to rob Peter and pay Paul when it came to calorie counting and macros and micros of nutrients, and it was really unhealthy. And it wasn't until that I completely understood that there was a book that changed my entire philosophy. This is after I wrecked my hormones and everything. It was by Matt Fitzgerald, and it was called Diet Cults. It was a book, and it was really good. And he just basically goes through all of the processes of diets, this and that. But then he calls like the final outcome like agnostic healthy eating. It's like you're not so focused on being 100% right all the time. It's not a religious thing. It's like eat the best quality as much as you can. And it's like the 80-20 rule. Allow for 20% intolerance of whatever you want and live a little. And ever since I've kind of been that way, I don't know what's up, but like people will say it, not me, the best abs in triathlon. Like I hear that every time I go anywhere. And it's because like, number one, I walk around with my core like always tight. That's just probably been something I've done since a kid because I never wanted to like feel bloated. So I always just tucked it in. So that made me more aware of my posture and my stature. And now that I'm more aware, like I want to feel good about what I'm eating and not punish myself. My kid, like she has a terrible relationship with food. And I think that's really the biggest problem we're dealing with right now is helping the young adults with all this misinformation and beauty on social media and perfection that is categorized in what they need to be. Like that is, I think, the biggest, hardest thing. Like we may be getting smarter and everyone's like, evolving as an adult, but I think the younger generation right now is really at the biggest disadvantage. And when it comes to your product, my daughter also hates needles, and we've had to get her some blood tests to see if she had like pandas or something, some food intolerances or some bacterial growth. So your testing device without needles, like have you seen kids
We
using
don't
this?
do kids yet. We do plan on heading in that direction, but yeah, it'd be amazing for kids. I mean, like technically speaking, like this might sound like the wrong thing, but as parents, I'm sure it's fine. Like you could do it in their sleep. Like their arm could just be like out of the bed and you just like quickly grab a vial of blood, like especially when they're really young and like they're just like crying out of fear or whatever it might be. Like you
Yeah.
could do it from home, like while they're asleep. Like I do mine like first thing in the morning while I'm in bed and stuff like that. So we haven't got into the realm of kids yet. Just there's a lot of like liability stuff there, but absolutely 100%. I also think like diet is a really challenging one. Like as you just said, like a lot of people who have bad relationships with food, like and fasting and all these kind of things. Like the thing is like you the framework that's really helpful for me is your body operates best when you like convince it that you're in a state of abundance. And I don't mean
Yes.
that in a spiritual way. It's like you want to convince your body that there's food around, there's hydration around, you're in a safe space, and then everything is going to operate like properly. You don't want to be in a state of like scarcity and survival because anytime you're in a state of scarcity and survival mode, your body stores more fat, your stress is much higher, and all these sort of things. And so, anytime you're in a state of abundance, like I like to use this analogy where like imagine you have a child, right? Like your daughter, for example. If you had a snack cupboard and you locked it all the time, anytime that snack cupboard is open, she's going to grab as much as she can and hide it under her bed, right? Like that's what your body
That's
does.
what I
Whereas
would
if
do.
that snack, yeah, if that snack cupboard is open all the time and the kid and you convince the child that there's food readily available for them, they'll just grab it free flowing and all those things. And your body's very much the same. Like if you predictably feed your body when it wants it, you're not stressing it out by doing like one thing I see that destroys biomarkers is people who don't fuel during their like training workouts and stuff like that. Like you're just stressing your body out, depleting your glycemic stores, and then your body's like storing more fat for recovery to try to recover later because the workout was more stressful. And so you want to always convince your body that like everything's readily available and it doesn't need to store fat and store this and store that because like it doesn't know when it's going to get fed next and all those sort of things. And so like you got to be really careful of slowing down your metabolic rate and various things because like you're putting yourself in a state of scarcity. And so I was going to say I have this sort of like contrarian thought, but it's not entirely true. But I think like nutrition is a little bit overrated. Like I think you should focus heavily on like protein in particular and fiber, and then just kind of let everything else take care of itself. Like, try to get like, your fruits and vegetables in or whatever it might be, and don't eat too much. But like, usually, if you eat enough protein and fiber, you'll be pretty satiated and it'll be more difficult to go over your calories. And so, yeah, I think protein and fiber are kind of the secrets when it comes to, a well-balanced diet.
We're hearing that more and more. Like even we had a webinar with Scott Tyndall from Fuel and the other day, and he was saying they're pushing, over two, whatever per kilogram. Was it two?
Was it 2 grams per kilo of body weight?
Yeah, it was higher. It was a lot higher than what we've always recommended, especially for athletes and
Yeah.
especially for women now as we are aging. And, I think the protein game is like actually one of those things we are starting to pay more attention to as athletes. And, everything
The cool
else.
thing with protein is you just pay it out. Like it's not like some of
Yeah.
these other things where you're gonna get like toxicity or whatever. Like your body like is very good at regulating protein, and so yeah, it's not one of those things that you can overdo.
And everyone's so concerned about, liver, but like you could lose half your liver and about a month later, it's pretty much regrown itself. Like it's like the most amazing mechanism ever, but we have it inside of our body.
Yeah.
But
And you know what's
specifically,
interesting? Based on the liver, just fun fact, as you said that it's the only um it's the only organ in the body that we can't man run. If that makes sense. Like you can get like a heart,
yeah,
you can keep the heart alive, you can keep the brain alive. Like we have like machines and stuff that do that, but the liver's just like impossible to like recreate its function, which is just wild. Like it's such a powerful organ.
yeah, we have to like do dialysis and take the blood out
Yeah.
and just do it existential to the body, which is crazy. You can't
Well,
just,
that's for kidneys. Like
oh yeah, you're
liver's
right.
like,
My bad.
yeah, liver, we don't actually have anything. Like it's actually a wild thing that you can't actually fix or replace it. Like you can take it out, transplant it, but you can't like you can do the kidney function through dialysis. You can put people in like a breath machine for their lungs. You can put them on like a heart maintained thing. You can keep the brain alive
Pacemaker.
in various ways. Pacemaker, yeah. But yeah, like in terms of a liver, like yeah, there's not much you can do.
That is a good fun fact.
Yeah.
Don't mess that up. Don't get fatty
Yeah.
liver and drink too much alcohol and kill that thing. You need it.
Yeah.
But I think the problem, what we're, really trying to advise here against is just all the marketing that's thrown at you at all times. Like I think with what you all are doing too, like you're the
Can I
percent.
just ask you something? Sorry, Nick, to interrupt you.
No, please
When
go.
Scott was talking, did he talk about fiber much? I'm curious, and was it mainly a protein focus, or did they mention
We had
fiber deeply as well?
that particular webinar was mainly about supplements you should likely look at if you're an athlete, which
Okay.
was protein, creatine. We were talking about how BCAs and EAs are just kind of garbage, and
Yeah.
looking at athletic greens and talking about their validity if there is any. So it was more of like a supplement myths situation, but protein was for sure one of the ones that we talked about a lot and the importance of,
Okay.
and
Yeah. No,
getting more of it.
fiber's just something I've been thinking about a lot. It's very difficult to get it to the place where you need it to be, and usually that just helps you clear everything out, and like it's just a great source. And I was actually thinking just last night, someone needs to create just a business idea for anyone listening. I feel like someone needs to create like a salt shaker for fiber or something like that, like some sort of like fiber you can just like put on foods really easily and
Well, isn't
like just
nutritional
get
yeast like a shitload of fiber or something like that?
probably. Yeah, I didn't know. I'm not. Someone mentioned nutritional yeast today that I was speaking to, and apparently it's like really high in B12. I don't know
Yeah.
nutritional yeast that well, but I'm gonna look into it after what you just said.
It tastes like
Second time
cheese.
today I've heard it, so it's just like no one ever talks about it twice today. So it's good. That's a sign that I need to look into it.
Yeah, look into it, man. But with your testing and the accessibility, we don't have to just go down this path of just like, blindly following the leader anymore and making impulse decisions. But I think like, man, the whole takeaway from this is just let's get more of like collective knowledge of understanding of what makes us all healthier as a society, rather than just backstabbing some other company because they have like, a cheaper price on something, so you buy that. Like I think that's the hardest part, is like the media, how things are reported. And like do you envision any, I don't know if I'd call it as something as extreme as backlash, but like pushback against what you're trying to create within Rythm? And I mean, obviously you've got great investors. You probably don't want to talk about any of that, but like you've got a lot of backing. But like, what does that look like from their high end optics? Like,
Wait, so what's your?
yeah, the question, I guess, since I kind of went down a rabbit hole, was like,
Because you asked two things. You were saying, do you expect media backlash? But what did you mean from the
well,
investment side
I
of it?
meant like as a whole, from your investment system to everyone who's kind of gotten behind you. Like, are you all worried at all about any disruption that you're creating to come back in reverberation towards like these other LabCorp, Quest, et cetera, other testing
I don't
companies?
think so. Like, I think there's a public trust element that just needs to be built in that sense. Like, this whole at-home test industry was tainted by Theranos, and I'm sure everybody's had that thought in their mind. And like, just to give everyone a perspective of what Theranos was doing was they're basically doing like a finger prick and saying of like one drop of blood, you can test like 100 biomarkers or something like that. The volume of blood determines how many biomarkers you can test. And so we take a lot of blood compared to Theranos, but not compared to LabCorp when you like go to the lab. And so just to give you a difference there, like we can test about 30 biomarkers at once. You're going to be able to test 60 when they double the size of the tubes. I will say when you go to the lab, they waste about 50% of your blood. A lot of people don't know that. The reason is certain biomarkers can only be tested in certain tubes. So that you may or may not have noticed, but they have different colored lids and certain
Absolutely.
biomarkers have to go in a different color. They might only need a tiny amount, but they just fill the tube up because like while you're there, they're just like whatever, like just in case we need it. And so what they typically do is store your blood at the lab, and then when the doctor gets your results, they store the blood for about 2 weeks. And so if the doctor needs to run any additional tests, they can do that. It's actually kind of smart because it's hard to get you to the lab. So they're like, let me just take a whole bunch, and then like we'll say blood's free. You're going to remake it. It's not a big deal. So like they don't need as much blood as they take, but also they still have much more blood than us. So like, in that framework. And then there's also really sensitive biomarkers. So certain biomarkers we don't test. We actually used to send every customer a little mini centrifuge. So ideally
Oh,
in the
wow.
short term, in the near future, everyone has a centrifuge in their house. And we were sort of working on that. Because what that does is you spin the blood, you separate the plasma from the serum, the plasma from the blood, and then it makes it a lot more stable. So you can test, like, we used to test glucose. You can't do that unless you centrifuge it. It's too sensitive. There's liver markers like AST. The electrolytes are really sensitive. And so there's going to need to be certain mechanisms. Like everyone has like a centrifuge in home, and maybe we do like refrigerated coolers. And like there's certain biomarkers we don't do today just because they're too sensitive, but we're working on mechanisms to do that. So like public trust is going to be a big one, like just getting people used to this. I'm 100% certain that like a majority of testing goes to the home. Like once you do it from home, like you said, you're like, this is so much better. And like, like we're working on different methods like urine testing, semen testing, like all these things are way more comfortable at home than they are in the lab, as you can imagine. And so we're doing more and more things from home these days, like the e-commerce infrastructure, the shipping infrastructure is much more like robust. People are used to getting their food delivered to home. They used to like you got Uber pickups from the house. Like we have the technology to do these things. So I think it's only a matter of time. Like more and more of these things are going to be done from home to, almost everything done from home, especially with AI coming. Um, in terms of pushback, like I mean, the main thing that I'm focused on and cautious of, like, are you familiar with like the crypto space?
Yeah, I've got a
Okay.
ledger right here.
Okay, perfect. So I think a good analogy of how I think about this is like you've got like Coinbase, right? And then you've got meme coins. Okay. Like I want to be Coinbase. Like,
Yeah.
we're doing some new things and like, interesting stuff on the frontier of technology, but I'm not running any biohacker experiments. I'm not like we're going to stay like in a really safe lane. We're going to really validate everything we do. I think you can lose your reputation way too easily in this space, and there's like a lot of snake oil and whatnot. So we're going to sort of stay in a space of credibility. There's a lot more experimentation thing we could be doing. We could do like way more crazy things and whatnot. But I'll let sort of like Brian Johnson and all of his friends like do that, and they can figure that out. And that like to me, that's important. Like the crypto space evolved because people created new alternative types of coins and whatnot, but a lot of it went up in flames. And so, but Coinbase played it safe the entire time and made a really safe environment for anybody who wanted to get into the space and try it without risk of losing their money. But people who want to be on the frontier and be in the Wild West can do that if they want to. That's not what we're doing. We're like more like the hey, general population want to do regular blood testing, want it to be legitimate, credible, all those sort of things. So as long as we keep to that philosophy, I feel relatively safe about what we're doing in terms of pushback. That was a long-winded answer, but I hope it answered your question.
No, that's great. And I really was looking for that. I wanted to know kind of what you're basing the model off of, what inspired you to kind of stay in the lane that you're in. And I think like you're right, public perception of this type of thing. You all are doing something. I mean, the only thing I've had that's close enough is I've had a phlebotomist come to my home, and that's the closest I've ever had to a situation like this. And again, someone else had to come to my house, and it was like my
Yeah.
kids were upstairs and they didn't want to come downstairs. Like it was just still a disruption, way more than it needed to be. So, I mean,
I'm glad you just said that. The amount of people that say to me, it's not that bad having a phlebotomist come to your house. I'm like, you have to get like dressed, you have to like clean your house, you have the kids. Like it's not, it's someone's coming over. Like it's kind of a big deal. And
yeah,
at 7 o'clock in the morning, you probably don't want to hang out with someone you don't really know. And like, it's just, it's annoying. Like as you kind of just said. Yeah.
yeah. And I think ultimately, kind of bring it full circle. Like that's why I wanted to really get a lot more information from you about you, where your head was. And I really feel like it's coming from it's a really honest, great place that is just general health and wellness. You're not trying to hit it and quit it and just sell the company, make a bill. Like you're just really trying to make a positive change for the collective, society we're all part of. And I really admire that because that's a lot of what
Yeah.
I'm trying to do.
I appreciate you saying that. I actually get this question all the time of everyone's like, when are you going to exit? What's the exit strategy and whatever? And I can tell you this, like every entrepreneur that I've seen that exits their company is like always depressed and like looking for the next thing. I think that I have like the coolest job in the world, and like I have no intention of exiting this company, at least in the short term. And like if I'm running this in 30 years time, I'm not going to be surprised. And I feel if my legacy is that we made healthcare more affordable for everybody, and we sort of raised the sort of tide of everyone's health education exponentially, like that's something I'd be incredibly proud of. And so like it's a endless wormhole of like nerding out and whatever. Like, we run enormous amounts of validation studies, and I get to speak with athletes like you and Dubrick and like various other athletes and Ben Canute and whatever, see their biomarkers. I get to see people who have chronic diseases and whatever, and like we get to like cross correlate patterns there. And so for me, it's some of the most meaningful work I've done in my life. And yeah, I have no interest in doing anything else. Like, but at the end of the day, like, we're just scratching the surface of what we're doing. Like, and we want to make things more and more affordable, like what I just said. Like, we're even looking into semen testing right now. For example, people charge like $300-400 for it. We're pretty sure we're going to be able to do it for like $50. And like, I think, from a fertility standpoint, people should check that more regularly. Even storing your sperm, like it's pretty cheap, and you can like freeze it and whatever, and then you don't have to worry about if something happens to you. Like freeze it in your early 20s and just have it as like an insurance policy. I think every male should do that. So there's just like interesting stuff that like no matter where you look, there's opportunities.
Especially if you're in the military. I did 13 years in the US Air Force, and I was around a lot of antennas and radiation and signals and shit. And I've never really gotten anyone pregnant. I'm just saying, like, and I'm not like the most safest individual out there, but like,
Yeah.
I don't think I've got like a very fertile situation anymore, thanks to all the bullshit I went through in my younger years. So I think that's cool. Like maybe when you are 22, 25, you invest in some storage. That way, when you're like in your late 30s and something happens, like you could, like, that's such a cool concept.
It's not even expensive. It's like $100 a year. Like to me, it's like literally the like most obvious thing that everyone should be doing. And I didn't know this. Like I tried this company and they were like, yeah, it's $100 a year to store it. I was like, $100 a year? Like, you kidding me? Like, I don't have to think about this ever again. And, whether it's radiation or, someone kicks you in the balls and you never recover, or like whatever, like it could be anything, like some sort of drugs that you do, or you drank too much in your youth, or whatever it could be. Do it while everything's healthy and just store it as like an insurance policy. And
Wow.
$100 a year to protect your chances of having a child in the future seems pretty cheap.
Well, hey man, if you ever need a VP of anything, like I'll work for you. I'll do anything.
Appreciate you saying that.
I'll take a position.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about that later. I'm always looking for talent. So, but yeah, so if did you have any other questions for me?
No, man, I think we nailed it. And honestly, like we came on to talk about obviously everything Rythm is associated with. And I think I want to make sure we end like once you do get your results and you have consultation with Robbie, or do you have somebody else doing consultations?
Yeah, no, we have a team of different people. So I just took yours.
Once the team is kind of giving you like their synopsis and what you should be recommended to do, ordering supplements, the recommendations, it's all done through the site, and it's all done at a discounted rate because of the deals you've worked hard to maintain. So I think that's the other part of it, is you're not just released into the wild. You're giving tools, you're giving feedback and follow up. And I really found that valuable, because that's the human experience is really going to be lacking more and more with all the AI stuff. And you'll probably have an AI do a lot of this stuff eventually, but then having that human experience was really good. So I wanted to make sure that I give you another round of applause to say this is a great ecosystem you're building, and I know you're just scratching the surface. And I think health and wellness space is good.
Yeah, just to touch on that. So I just want to make a couple of comments. So we do have supplements in the marketplace, but I want to make it clear we don't sell our own supplements. We did that on purpose. Like I always say to everybody, people say, which ones do you recommend? We just have the supplements that we
Multiple
like, but
brands.
We don't take any offense if you go and buy your own. It's like it's choose your own adventure. The other thing I was going to say is with the AI, I think what's really important is there's a lot of things the AI is going to know in a personal context. Like we are going to release an AI, but there will still be humans whenever you need it. Because the AI is going to have an enormous amount of context on you, and it's going to be able to tell you a lot of things that I can't. For example, and so you're going to be able to go back and forward and say, "What about this?" And you're laying in bed at night, just like texting it and just asking different questions. And so, but then if you want to have like ask very specific questions or go through something together, you can bring a human into the loop. So I think it just makes the service even better, where you can bounce ideas, ask questions in between, and
Trend
then take
analysis,
a call with us.
especially.
Yeah,
Like you can ask AI to look at hundreds of thousands of records in a matter of minutes, and like it would
correct.
take any human, a lot more time. So I think that's
Yeah, and like what you said, you had what was it, an athlete blood test you were using. We're going to allow you to upload your previous results, and so we can go through all of your previous analysis plus what you're looking at now way faster than I can. But we will still be in the loop because I think that there is always a human element that actually matters, and like people just want to, like, half of it is a therapy session in many cases where it's just
yeah,
like, hey man, like listen, like just think about this. Like even I spoke to a gentleman earlier today and he was like, sometimes if I didn't train that day, I'll like skip dinner and like I shouldn't do that. And like, it's funny, like people know that they're doing things that they shouldn't do and they just need someone to be like, hey man, like you can try harder or whatever. Like it's just that human thing. And I always actually say this, like you're a coach. People say to me like, hey man, you're like pretty disciplined and whatever. Like, why do you need a coach? Like, you know what you're doing. And there's like something about like, when you do like a hard workout and your coach just texts you like, crushed it, mate, or something like that. Like your mom could say that or your best friend could say it, but it doesn't mean the same thing because they don't get it. Like in terms of your coach knows, and you just need that like positive validation that you're doing like the right thing. And like like AI just can't do that. Like for whatever reason, I don't know if it ever will be able to do it. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. It's too early to tell. But like someone who knows you incredibly well and has been part of your journey, like giving you like the thumbs up is like one of the greatest feelings ever, at least for me. And I think for most people it is.
especially if you're a peer. And I think like I do tell most athletes, I'm like, look, you can go buy a training plan anywhere you want. It's going to be
Yeah.
probably okay, but like you get me looking at everything. We're friends. We're going to be 4 or 5 years of us doing this shit together. It's way more fun that way, I promise you. And
Yeah.
you're not, all the guesswork that happens when you're starting this sport, like same thing with what you're doing. Like you're going to give people a crash course into all the things they should care about a lot faster rather than stumbling around for 2 or 3 years and paying somebody way too much money to analyze their results like I did when I was first starting it. And I told you, like, tons of cash was thrown at my health and wellness from the holistic system because insurance doesn't cover a damn thing. And
Yeah.
so if you're in a position where you've got a chronic disease and you need extra help because these therapies are expensive, you're going to be shelling out 30 to hundreds of $1,000s every single year just to maintain a quality of life where, like, think about what you could have done otherwise, like to prevent a lot of the stuff, or if you had more knowledge, or if people came in like you and try to streamline some of these processes.
Exactly. So yeah, appreciate you putting us on, man. I appreciate the gas up in that sense. And I highly encourage everyone to try it. I think we've got an RTS discount code.
Yeah.
We do offer a money back guarantee. So if you guys aren't happy with the service, just let us know and we'll refund the money for you. But yeah, we have a pretty active customer service network, so you'll be pretty supported the entire way through. And we'd love your feedback and get on board and let us know what you think.
Yeah. If you do want to go try it and you want to use our code because you're listening to this podcast, you just simply type in RTS and you will get your 30% off, and give Rythm Health a shout on social. Tell us hi. I mean, and that's not what it's all about, but every little bit helps when this community is growing. And I know you guys need some growth on all levels. We need awareness, and I got your back, buddy. Whatever I can do.
Let's go. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being authentic, and thanks for coming on, buddy. We'll do a follow up in a year when you're like on your yacht.
You'll be there with me. You just said you're gonna come work for us.
Yeah, man.
Pleasure, man.
All right, peace out.